Update on the progress of the Cedar Falls High School. So we have here this evening joining us via video conference is Mr. Sanderman from Envision Architecture. Are you there, Ryan?
Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Are you seeing my screen?
Not yet. Now we are.
All right. Well, thanks for having us to give an update tonight on the Cedar Falls High School. I think last time we gave an update was in June, and so there's been a lot going on since then. Our process going through. Are you guys hearing me okay?
Yes.
Showing you the process slide several times before. And we're finally making it to the implementation phase of our project. So that's great. We've been the last several months, July, August, September, have really been about what we call implementation, getting into the details, taking all that design feedback we've gotten from everyone, and really developing documents for the bidder is really what this phase is about, and getting into the details, having lots of meetings with consultants to coordinate their work and make it part of the project. A little bit, you guys have seen several of these images before, so I'll just kind of keep it high level. We've been doing a little refining of the design as we've gone through. So I'll just hit on a few highlights, and tonight we're also going to have Story Construction branches joining us to talk about schedule and some pricing up. We've been going through development. We've also been working with Story Construction on reviewing pricing. That was a lot of July and August was that effort. So site, the same as what you've seen before, really taking that sustainable approach to the site with setting this building in the prairie and developing some formal landscaping really at the door, and the rest of the campus becomes a lot of seeding of prairie grass around it. The development of the site has great connectivity to the adjacent 27th Street, to UNI, the future neighborhood, etc. And the sustainable practices of the parking lot, developing bioswales as you've done on some of your other projects. And recently, the project went to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and they all gave it the thumbs up. So we're moving on. We'll have a presentation to the City Council in October and getting final approval of the site plan. But so far, good things from the city. We've been working with them throughout the process. Of that front door, really you can start to see here setting this building in that prairie, developing that welcoming feel to the front door. You see a little bit of tiger paw there. You can get a little hint there, starting to develop some of those tiger pride moments as you enter the school. Some warmth of the wood as your ability as well. Really focusing the exterior design on durable materials that are regional, precast. This is a back view of the Commons learning area. The learning communities there on each side will be, looks dark black here, but it's a dark charcoal masonry that'll be back there, very durable finish as well. So thinking about sustainability in types of materials that we're using as well, and bringing that that warmth. Here it's really developed wood look elements that are made out of metal, so there's a lot of longevity and durability in those materials. So jumping inside, again, carrying that that concept of warmth in, welcoming here. This is as you enter the front door into these public spaces of the theater to the right, and a little glimpse of the gym to the left there. Our our drivers for the project, a lot of natural daylight coming in through what you saw in the main entrance image into this entrance, as well as bringing light in this main corridor spine. Jumping into the theater, warming up that space with wood panels as well. Another image as you progress down the main corridor, you can see a little glimpse into the gym here, and then looking all the way out through the commons is what you see at the far end, is that little bit of light you see acting all the way through the building. Pulling in, again, some of that tiger pride in certain moments, especially in athletics here in the gymnasium. That natural light with clear story glazing at the top, that's the key. Other moments in the project, leadership offices throughout, centralized, and at the front door as well. This gives you a glimpse of the Commons cafeteria, essentially space where students will be eating, be having large groups can be here. You'll be able to look down the corridor to the right to FCS and art, and those rooms down the side, natural light coming into the courtyard element that we've talked about. A lot of variety of space throughout here. Walking back then, set up from the public at that front door, and then through the commons area, and then we really have these portals into the learning communities, which start to be a little bit more private spaces where the learning is happening. These learning spaces just outside, the learning studios for opportunities, those great flexible breakout spaces where students are in the classroom, having some instruction, able to break out into smaller groups, creating a flexibility and variety. And that central space is daylit with bringing natural light in from the north of the facility. Learning studio opened up to that co-learning space, so teachers have connections, can view their students, as well as be in the space, again, with lots of natural light in here. Ability of furniture, how we select that will be key to development of these. That's kind of the tour and some updates visually of the interior of the building. Quick slide on schedule, and then Brant, I think, is going to go into a little more detail. The highlighted box is really our construction document phase. Essentially, we've got about 5 weeks left to get through documenting, and then we'll be out to bid. And you can see the rest of the schedule there with construction in fall of 2024. And I'll kind of turn it over to Brant and let him walk through a little more detail of where we're going from currently and into bid day and what that starts to look like, as well as talk a little bit about pricing verification. Do you want to stay on this slide or go to the next slide?
Yeah, if we can just stay here, Brian, I think that works pretty well. I'm getting a little bit of feedback, so Brian, maybe if you mute, that will help. So just as Brian said, we get that kind of the honor and privilege of working with Brian and his team through really the design process, and our role in there is to help predict costs at the really at the end of the process, which would become bid day. So we've been working closely with Envision, the design consultants, the district throughout the design process, just to measure project costs related to the budget, so we can make educated, informed decisions along the way, all in effort to really come to a bid day in mid-December. This process during design has a few checkpoints, just as Brian mentioned, with a final review really occurring during the month of October for an early November update before documents are then issued out to bid. Naturally, the goal is to balance the scope and the allowable project budget, which is established at the district of 112.8. That's total project costs. And as it is with most projects, the budget's been challenged along the way to provide the maximum benefit and value for the district. So along the way, we break down the project costs into construction costs, into soft costs, as well as balancing some contingencies. So construction costs are just what you think they are. They're the concrete, they're the paving, they're the walls, they're the roof, they're the HVAC systems and electrical systems. They're the nuts and the bolts of actually what goes together. And based on the documents provided early on in conceptual through schematic design and now through design development, we take those documents and we price that. And we look at what are current construction costs, and then more importantly, what are they going to be on bid day? Because that's where we're actually going to try to predict where those are. And then related to that, what are the soft costs that need to happen? So the district has a full picture of what all project costs are going to be. That includes the furniture that's included in there, the audio-visual systems, as well as some relocation expenses to get the district moved from the current high school to the new high school. And so our current project update would be our construction costs are holding fairly steady where we need them to be as it relates to target. We've estimated out all those soft costs for where they want them to be. We've escalated our construction costs about 2.5%. This is a long project. So we know on bid day, just like the drywaller who's not going to be on site for maybe 18 months, he needs to predict out what his costs are going to be for when he's going to be on site when he's bidding here in at the end of 2020. So we did include in our estimate a little cost escalation along the way. All that seems to be holding steady, as well as the soft costs. We do have an advancement of design contingency included in our estimate. We are balancing that against, and that advancement of design is really used for anything that isn't currently shown on the drawings or some refinement that occurs through construction documents. And just as Brian said, those are reaching their final stages. They have about 5 weeks left before they reach their nature. So we kind of get an in-progress set, and then we apply a contingency accordingly to the completion of those documents to reach a full project budget. And we also hold a change order contingency that would manage any changes that would occur during construction. So we want to make sure all pots of money are accounted for along the way. And so just as Brian said, the design is in its final stages. We know wise decisions are being made so that there's a successful budget update really at the beginning of November, all in an effort to predict how bids are going to come in mid-December. And that final budget update is one of the last validation points that the project had to make sure that it's tracking within its budget. And we always want to address market conditions and what are they currently, what do we think they're going to be. And so we're in a very competitive construction market. There's many firms who are seeking work right now, and we foresee that's going to continue definitely through the rest of the 2020 and into the first part of 2021. We've seen some fluctuation in construction material costs, especially lumber pricing. But right now we're seeing overall costs remaining fairly flat through the remainder of 2020. We do see that continuing into the first quarter of 2021. This is really all in favor for Cedar Falls. Bidding in mid-December falls right in line with that. It's a good time to be buying construction services. And so the bid period aligns very favorable in the market for this project. We're frequently asked a couple questions. One of those is what happens if we come in under budget on bid day? The second one of those is what happens if we're over budget on bid day? And so first, if bids come in favorable, we've employed a bidding strategy with add alternates. So if bids come in under budget, the district has the opportunity to review those options, understand the cost associated with them, and then add those to the projects if they see fit. Conversely, if bids come in over budget, the district can award certain bid packages. We can revisit, revise, and rebid certain bid packages so that there gets to be some alignment with the overall budget in and of itself. And we, along with the design team, will serve as a guide to Cedar Falls through that bidding and contract award process. So that's a little bit of an overview of the process that we've had through budgeting. Gives a little bit of flavor of currently where we are, but yet one more price check that's coming through the month of October. Brian, why don't you go to the next slide? Our project manager, Shane Geiselhart, will overview just a few of the key dates that are coming up, as well as overview the construction schedule. Shane?
Sure. Thanks, Brant. And really here, there's a couple notices that are required for state code that we captured with the notice of hearing, which is shown to publish on the 26th, and also the bid notice, which will go out with the final CDs or construction documents. Really, the bid period ends up being from November 10th, when the documents go out onto the street, as we like to call it, where everybody can access them and start reviewing them and preparing their pricing based on the bid packages that are included for bid day on December 15th. Then there'll be a short period of time from the 15th to the 21st where we'll be analyzing bids, preparing recommendations, identifying any irregularities that will need to be addressed that we'll bring forward to the board on that December 21st date. And then coming out of that, the intent would be to be moving forward with contracts and getting subcontractors on board and able to mobilize in the spring as soon as weather allows in March or April. Brian, I would like to share my screen of the quick animation. That I'll pull up, and let's see. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to start with an overall site plan view and just kind of talk through how the structures come together. This animation is good to show our sequence and how we're approaching it. So I'm going to rewind this. And so this area here is that north end, right before of the main building block, with the learning community up in here. So what we have is this ends up being the low spot where we can dig down and start coming out of the ground with our retaining wall foundations, while everything to the south is in a settlement period, as we call it, where we're going to bring in fill. Everything I have to settle for a 10-week period, so we're somewhat stuck watching dirt settle for a large area of the building. But while that's happening, there is areas we can work to the north. There's identified with the steep retaining wall, and then you can start to see the footings and foundations going in with the learning wing or learning community academic wing. And then as it progresses through the end of the year, the green is the structural steel starting to come together. So it jumped to it pretty quickly, but within the schedule, we'll bounce from this retaining wall to this academic wing and then down to the theater area, where we, as the documents get finalized, we'll realize a little more complication with the footings and foundations in that area, just to the size of the structure and what's going on there. And then we'll move into the gymnasium area directly after that. And then start filling in the structural steel between the auditorium and gym and that northern academic wing. And then as the structure is set, we'll follow behind with enclosure. And then as you can see with this animation, you really It starts filling in everything with solid colors, and after that point, it's all work going on within the interior of the building through to the end of the project. But really just wanted to show structurally how we're going to advance down the site with the project and the sequence that we've identified so far. So really that's the gist of what we wanted to share. If there's any questions.
Just a question, before I ask for questions from the group, are all three of you, Brian, Brent, and Shane, sorry. Shane, do you have any other comments before we move into questions? Okay, questions from the board?
Not from me.
Go ahead.
I just, so you said that construction starts in the spring of 2021. Does that, is that the foundational work that is starting at that time, or has some of that already begun?
That'll be the site work. We'll be clearing the site, and there's actually about 10 foot of fill that goes onto the main building pad. So that'll be a couple month process for that to progress and get us to a point where we can start foundations. So the actual concrete work, we're projecting probably a July, August date.
Can, and maybe this is a question for Brent or Shane, but talk to me, if you would, about or explain the number of bid packages that you're going to have and how you're going to qualify candidates to put together bids, and how many bidders, is there a minimum number of bidders that you would like to have for each package, and how are we going to, because obviously the more bidders we have, hopefully that means the more competitive that it is. Can you kind of talk through that process, please?
There's lots of good questions in there, Jeff. And so, Shane, why don't you cover just current number of packages we anticipate, and then I'll tackle the qualification process that happens post bid, and then the number of bidders that we want to receive.
Sure. So with all the different packages, I anticipate 26 to 30 bid packages. As we get the final specs and drawings, we'll be able to touch in on that number as we combine or separate different scopes of work to make it attractive to the market.
And in conjunction with those bid packages, Jeff, we put together a kind of a written scope or that goes along with each one that is associated with the drawings and the specification, just for clear baton handoffs between contractors. So that's our role in the job, to make sure all 26 to 30 bid packages are fully coordinated and vetted, so we have all of the scope accounted for on bid day. So you brought up a good question about how does the district as a public entity get to be able to make sure you get a responsive and then a responsible bid. Those are the two key words that Iowa Code allows. So a responsive bid is about what happens on bid day, and you have to have a bid bond, you have to have your bidder status form, you have to have the bid form filled out. All of those are kind of requirements to play, if you will. And then once bids are opened and read, there's going to be an apparent low bidder. And through there, then there's a verification that they're responsible. That's the second component that public entities have to make sure contractors are qualified to go do the work. Meaning, do they have the financial standing? Do they have the manpower? Do they have the equipment? Are they well-versed in the type of work that they're bidding on? So that's the vetting process that occurs after bid to make sure that the apparent low bidder is able to go do the work. The number of bidders is a good question. So we always target, we would like to have at least 3 bidders in each package. We know that there's some that we're going to have 7. There's some we're going to have 2. But we always like to make sure that there's good competition and that always provides a good value to the district. So we always try to hover around that 3 to 4. I was just talking with an individual in our office today about advocating for the job, and that will actually start. It has started. I would say it will continue on through October. The last half of October, we're going to put an effort together to make sure this job is on trade contractors' bidding calendars before it even goes out. This is a sizable job in the state, a sizable job for the area, and so we don't want this to. We want it on people's calendars to make sure that they're going to be bidding, and that will be an active way to make sure we have good participation during that third bid scenario.
Excellent. Well, yeah, obviously, as many people as we can get to bid on this, it would be better. Additional? You have additional
Yeah, I
question?
just had one more question about the bidders. Will we make an attempt to try to get as many local or regional bids as possible, and then think about the use of regional materials as well for the project?
Yeah, great question, and absolutely. And so as we are preparing kind of the bid packages, we always try to align those to make sure that contractors within the community, local, the more local we can make it, the better off we will be. And so we definitely want to advocate for the right contractors to be participating in that, and as well as sourcing materials. So there isn't anything that comes from a long ways away. All the materials can be sourced pretty readily available. So both of those we make a wholehearted effort to make sure we're recruiting good local contractors to be bidding on this. For a publicly bid, that doesn't preclude others, right, from participating in that. But nonetheless, we do make an exerted effort to make sure the local market's served.
Another question for the whole construction team there, if you will. So we have elements within our design that we would like to see to fruition in the near future, i.e. a performance center and also a swimming pool. If you would kind of talk about the steps that you're taking as a team to ensure that we're doing all the necessary preparations so that it doesn't require a lot of rework when we're able to proceed with those portions of the project.
It's a great question, Jeff. And Brian, I might have you take it from just a design standpoint, all the things that are being accounted for from a master planning, maybe kind of how that can phase into overall delivery.
Yeah, so we're looking at what makes sense, Jeff, in terms of roughing in utilities, sizing, mechanical equipment, electrical equipment, gear as it's coming into the building. So those things can be pulled from a centralized location where it makes sense. Some of those buildings will obviously have their own independent mechanical systems to a certain extent, but obviously we'll be extending certain utilities from the main utility branches and roughing those things and coordinating with what we think makes sense in this initial phase to set things up so there isn't a lot of rework in the future for both of those facilities.
Excellent. Thank you. More of an educational question. I know I've been asked, as a result of COVID, has it changed anything in the design of the building? And I'm looking at kind of our team. Is there anything that, as a result of COVID, that we need to do differently in the building, or is there anything different?
You know, we've spent quite a bit of time talking through that, talking about that. We know that the key component of education not only is the learning, but the socialization, learning those, those core competencies of working collaboratively with multiple groups, multiple people. We also know that the options for virtualization is going to be crucial as we move to the future. What do classrooms look like when we have enrichment opportunities that could be done synchronously, asynchronously, sometimes even remotely. So those are concepts we built into a lot of this design with those flex spaces and common spaces, some small group areas, even some individual areas. So students can take advantage of what we believe are going to be multiple modes of educational opportunities as we look to the future.
Does that change anything as far as our technology that we need to implement, as far as cameras and projectors and that type of thing?
Yes.
I can jump in there
actually, different
too a little
interactions.
bit, Andy.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say I can jump in there a little bit too and let Andy can kind of fill in. Yeah, we've talked with audiovisual and getting things set up in those different spaces, as Andy was mentioning, to allow teachers, to go in and potentially video record themselves, depending on the technology that's getting purchased. Students, and that can be multi-used for students doing student projects or doing a YouTube video for a class presentation, things like that. Andy, you want to fill anything else in with that?
No, that sums it up really well. I think there's, technology as it ever changes and, evolves each and every year. It's something that we're continuing to review and look at. So when we have this building open up, we have those resources available to make sure that we are on the cutting edge and doing the things that we need to do for our staff, for our students.
Something budget-wise, we're looking at trying to rough in those flexible spaces, a lot of different rooms throughout the building. If some of that technology isn't purchased day one, at least it's set up for that technology to happen, and those rough-ins are capable of that.
Along those same lines, can you just touch on the HVAC and air handling systems and how those will help us be safe in moments like this as well?
Yeah, in terms of the air handling, there are some new standards that have been developed as part of COVID from what the engineering guidelines come from a group called ASHRAE. And so there are things in this that are being designed to a higher standard. There'll be additional filtration in this system that is higher than what you would typically have based on those recommendations and guidelines, so that air is getting filtered at a higher rate. And this building will have, similar to your other new buildings, will have systems that are ventilating properly. We'll be able to look at data to see if the CO2, the carbon, is at a level that's appropriate for those types of spaces, and make sure the mechanical systems are calibrated properly for that air quality.
And I know we've talked about this in the past, but the sustainability of this building is going to be immense, which I think we're very excited about, going from the mechanical systems, but also the exterior walkability, bikeability, I think is going to be really great to see. But it's the approach that we've had is we want to be a regional leader. I'd be remiss without saying thank you to the City of Cedar Falls for their partnership, for UNI with their work regarding this, but certainly CFU, the amount of solar and renewable energies that we're going to be able to utilize in this building is going to be a direct reflection of the work that's happening really behind the scenes by a lot of different groups and organizations.
Excellent. Good questions. Not seeing any others. So thank you to Brian, Brent, and Shane for joining us and providing us the update this evening. We appreciate it. We're looking forward to an aggressive bidding season, and certainly, Brent, that what comes out is in your example is that we end up being under budget, and then we have some extra money to do some additional things. So thank you very much, team, for presenting this evening.